The forge was always awake before the sun, long before the town stirred to life. 4 footsteps echoed through the narrow streets. The sound of iron meeting iron would rise into the quiet air, steady, rhythmic, unchanging. That was where Armand lived. In that sound, in that repetition, in that endless cycle of effort. His hands were rough, shaped by years of labor. His shoulders carried a quiet strength, the kind that didn't ask to be noticed. Every morning, he would light the fire, watch the flames grow, begin again. Hammer, heat, shape, repeat to anyone passing by. It looked like an ordinary life, simple, predictable, safe. But inside Armin, something restless had begun to grow. He believed in hard work. He believed that if you gave your time, your energy, your focus, life would eventually return something meaningful. That effort would carve a path forward. That consistency would build something lasting yet. As the years passed, nothing seemed to change. The same customers came and went. The same small coins filled his pocket. The same quiet evenings greeted him at the end of each day. No breakthroughs, no recognition, no sign that he was moving any closer to something greater. And slowly, almost without noticing, a question began to take shape in his mind. Is this all there is? He would watch other craftsmen in the town, merchants expanding their shops, builders gaining praise, traders earning fortunes. Their lives seemed to move forward, while his remained still, like a flame that never grew beyond its small, steady burn. One evening, as the fire dimmed and the last piece of iron cooled beneath his hands, Armand paused. For the first time in years, he didn't reach for the next task. He simply stood there, staring at the tools, at the workbench, at the life he had built through repetition. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in the world around him, but within him. The belief that once gave him strength was beginning to crack. The next morning, Armin woke with a different kind of fire inside him. It wasn't the quiet, steady flame he had known for years. This one was sharper, restless, demanding more. If consistency alone wasn't enough, he thought, then perhaps he simply hadn't pushed hard enough. Perhaps the problem wasn't the path, but the pace. So he began to change. He worked longer hours, often before sunrise and long after the town had fallen asleep. The rhythm of his hammer grew faster, more intense, as if each strike carried a silent urgency. He studied his craft with new eyes, paying attention to every detail, the temperature of the metal, the angle of each strike, the precision of every curve. And slowly, something began to shift. The tools he crafted became sharper, stronger, more refined. His blades held their edge longer. His horseshoes lasted through harsher journeys. People began to notice. A farmer, once a regular, returned with a quiet nod of approval. A traveler paused longer than usual, admiring the balance of a blade. Even other craftsmen began to glance at his work with subtle respect. For the first time, in a long while, Armin felt something different. Pride. It was small at first, just a flicker, but it grew with each passing day. Each improvement, each compliment, each coin earned through recognition rather than routine, all fed that feeling. Maybe this is it, he thought. Maybe this is what I've been working toward. And so he pushed even harder. But beneath that rising confidence, there was something else, something quiet, something easy to ignore. Because while his skill was growing, so was his expectation. He no longer just wanted progress. He wanted proof. Proof that his years of effort meant something. Proof. Consistency would finally reward him in a way he could see, measure, and hold. And though success had begun to knock softly at his door, Armand had already started listening for something louder. It came on a day that felt like any other. The fire was steady, the tools were in place. And Armand, with quiet confidence, shaped a blade he believed was his finest work yet. The balance was perfect, the edge precise, the finish smooth like still water. That morning, a wealthy merchant arrived in town. Word spread quickly. The man was known for supplying the finest weapons and tools across distant cities. Whoever earned his trust would not just gain coins, but reputation, opportunity, a future beyond the limits of this small town. When the merchant stepped into Armand's forge, something inside him tightened, not with fear, but with hope. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. Armand presented, his work with steady hands. He said little, letting the craft speak for itself. The merchant examined the blade carefully, turning it beneath the light, testing its weight, its edge, strength. For a brief moment, silence. Then, a small nod. Impressive. The merchant said quietly. That single word lit something inside. Armand, a spark that felt like years of effort finally catching flame. But it didn't last. Because just hours later, the merchant made his decision. He chose another blacksmith. Someone louder, more known. Someone whose name carried weight beyond the quality of their work. The news reached Armand not through the merchant, but through whispers in the town. At first, he didn't react. He stood still, as if the words hadn't fully arrived yet. As if they were still traveling, trying to find a place to land inside him. He chose someone else. The thought repeated itself. It's heavier each time. And then something broke. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, deeply. All the hours, the early mornings, the late nights, the endless repetition. For what? He looked around his forge, the same walls, the same tools, the same life. Nothing had changed. And in that moment, the belief that once carried him forward turned into something else. Entirely doubt. Doubt did not arrive like a storm. It came quietly, settling into the corners of Armand's mind, whispering questions he could not ignore. But instead of facing it, he resisted. No. This isn't the end, he told himself. I just need to do more, be better, work harder. So he returned to the forge the very next morning, earlier than ever before. The fire burned hotter, the hammer struck faster. The rhythm that once felt natural now carried a sense of urgency, almost desperation. Armand was no longer working. With calm intention, he was chasing something. Each piece he crafted had to be perfect, not just good, flawless. He began reworking finished tools, melting them down again and again, searching for a level of precision that no longer satisfied him. Hours turned into exhaustion. Days blurred into restless nights. And yet, nothing felt enough. The quiet pride he once felt in his work had disappeared. In its place was a constant tension, a voice reminding him that he had already failed once. That no matter how much effort he gave, it might never be recognized the way he hoped. Still, he refused to stop because stopping meant accepting, and accepting meant admitting that something about his belief had been wrong, so he held on tighter to the past, to the idea that effort must always lead to reward, to the expectation that consistency should guarantee success. But the more he held on, the more he began to lose. His hands, once steady, started to tremble from fatigue. His focus slipped. Small mistakes crept into his work, the very thing he feared the most. And with each mistake, frustration grew. The forge, once a place of quiet purpose, now felt heavy, suffocating. One evening, as the fire roared louder than usual, Armand struck the iron harder than he needed to, again and again and again, until suddenly the metal cracked. A sharp, jagged break split through the piece he had been shaping for hours. Armand froze. The sound echoed in the silence that followed, and for the first time, he realized that something inside him was beginning to break in the same way. The next day, the forge was quieter than usual. Not because the fire had gone out, but because Armand had. His movements were slower, heavier, as if each action carried a weight he could no longer explain. The hammer still rose and fell, but without rhythm. Without purpose. That was when the traveler arrived. He didn't look like much, just an old man with worn clothes and a calm, steady presence. His steps were unhurried, his eyes observant, as if he were listening to something deeper than sound. He stood at the entrance of the forge for a while, watching. Not the tools, not the fire, but Armand. You strike the iron like you're trying to punish it. the old man said gently. Armand didn't respond at first. He kept working as if the words hadn't reached him, but they had. It's just work, Armand muttered finally. The old man stepped closer, his gaze soft but unwavering. No, he said. It used to be more than that. Something about the way he said it made Armand pause. The hammer lowered slowly in his hand. The old man picked up a finished blade from the table, turning it carefully in the light. Tell me, he asked, when did you stop trusting your own hands? Armand frowned. I never did. The old man smiled faintly. Then why do you look at your work like it has betrayed you? Silence. For a moment, Armand had no answer. Because the truth was, he'd been waiting for his work to prove something back to him, waiting for the world to confirm that all his effort meant something. I worked for years, Armand said quietly. And when it finally mattered, it wasn't enough. The old man nodded, as if he had heard this story many times before. Consistency is not a bargain, he said softly. It does not promise you when the reward will come. Armand looked at him, confusion and frustration mixing in his eyes. Then what's the point? The old man placed the blade back on the table gently. The point, he said, is that while you were waiting for the world to change, you were the one being shaped. The words lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long while, Armand didn't argue.